Hello everybody, my name is Lynn, and welcome back to Manga Review. Let me zoom out a little bit. Today, no, it's not Steel Ball Run Volume 2. I'm still getting myself through that. But today we're going to be covering Kagurabachi. But before we get into that, I did, rearrange my manga shelf a little bit. There's not much changes, especially here, except for Volume 4 of Kagurabachi, which I got yesterday. But the main changes are like up here in these shelves because I've switched Chainsaw Man and Children X, along with having Don Don up here, and all this whole order being different, and all that stuff. But we're gonna be covering Kagurabachi Volume 1 today. I just finished Volume 4, and I really enjoyed it, so I thought, might as well cover Kagurabachi, as it's one of my favorite new gen manga right now. Especially because of the sword fights and all that stuff, which I will glaze Volume 2 for. Let's see. Let's get down on the ground. Let's get out on the ground. So this story is about a little guy named Chihiro, and the first panels, or the first little bit of chapter 1, is him and his dad forging something called an enchanted blade, which we will touch on later as it's an integral part to the story. And they're having bonding moments, they're explaining what they do, and stuff like that. That guy right there is named Shiba. He doesn't do much in the story, especially in the first couple arcs, but he's kind of there as a support for Chihiro. But let's move on. So, Chihiro's dad was murdered by a group called the Ishaku, and now he's invading a mafia base, or a yakuza base, whatever. A villain gang base. It's not the Ishaku, but it's a bad base. So he's killing them. This guy is held hostage. He slaughters them. By the way, perspectives in this manga are so clean. There's a lot better perspectives in the later volumes, especially with the most current arc, the Swordbearer assassination arc. But I don't have that arc yet in physical edition because they're not in English. So I have to cover that later. We got some aura farming moments here. This is mainly just fighting a whole bunch here. More aura farming. This is an enchanted blade. It's called N10. And it's basically just fishes. Here, I'll explain the main abilities here, as are really there's like 3 main abilities to a enchanted blade. So one, he has Akka. He has I already forgot. There's Akka. There's Kuro. Yeah, Kuro. And then there's Nishiki. That's what it is. So Kuro is just a long range slash. Akka absorbs an attack, and then you can fire it back at an opponent later on. And Nishiki is basically just a cloak. He uses it later here. But yeah. So that is Kuro. Does he use it here? No, he doesn't. He's just kind of flying. Here he uses Nishiki here, and it's basically just a big old boost to his stats. Here, I'm gonna flip later into the book. So, okay, so this guy right here, he's hunting down Chihiro because he has a bounty on his head, which was discovered earlier in the volume. Here, let me try and flip to that part. Is this chapter 2? It is chapter 2. Oh yeah, and there's his father kind of dead by the Ishaku. And now they're in Tokyo. This is Hanao, who tells them about a client who is requesting bodyguards because they're getting hunted. That's the client. It's a little girl named Char, who's really mainly important in the first arc. I don't know if she'll come up later in the other arcs, but she doesn't really pop up much later, like the Rakuzaichi arc, which I actually do have. I actually got 2 of the Rakuzaichi arc volumes. But we'll cover that in later videos, right? So there's Char sleeping. They don't believe her at first because, well, she's a child. But then, she's actually right, because that's another assassin trying to get that bounty. And he ends up blowing up the place, and then they end up fighting for a bit. And this is actually where Akka gets shown off, if I can find it. So yeah, so this guy uses Darumas to explode shit, and it's really sick. Uses Kuro again. He gets trapped, and then he uses Akka, which he absorbed, and then he just kind of blows him up. Some more panels here, some more panels. You can get interrogated. Char wants ice cream and milkshakes and all that shit. Now, this is the main villain of this arc. And this arc is called the Versus Sojo arc. So this guy is Genichi Sojo. He has this guy hanging up, and he's a real bad guy. He's working with the Shaku. Shit's itchy, hold on. Alright. So then there's Char saying that she is happy, which is very heartwarming. There's Genichi Sojo getting out of the bath. The road gets warped. And this is where this guy comes in. So basically all the context is there. There's another assassin. So Chihiro's car gets trapped and all that, and they end up running into an alley. He ends up, slicing all these guys. Oh yeah, there's a shot there of something called the Seitei War, which is very sick. And this panel is an inspiration for a lot of the war arcs I like writing in my own personal free time. This entire manga really is a sword fight inspiration for me. But I'll talk about that more later with Volume 2 up there, because that's my favorite volume. So basically, this guy comes in and he makes Chihiro relive all his memories and stuff. And then he ends up revealing that Char's blood is regenerative. And that's why they're kind of after Char, or why Sojo is after Char, and that's why they put a bounty on him. And of course, Sojo also wants this enchanted blade. The context behind this enchanted blade is that there's 7 of them, but nobody knows about the 7th one, so everybody thinks there's 6, but there's 7, so Gojo wants the 7th one to study, but that's covered later on in Volume 2, which I'll show later. So he ends up just, slicing up all these guys, ends up saving the day. Some more guys show up, but then this aura farmer right here, I think his name is like Azami or something like that. He doesn't have much importance now. He does in the Sword Bearer Assassination arc, but that's pretty much it, or at least to my knowledge right now. So he kicks this guy's asses. This guy's name is Azami, right? I'm trying to find where it says his name. I don't really care anymore. But basically, he's a member of an organization called the Kamunabi, which is just a whole bunch of sorcerers who use sorcery to keep Japan safe from other Seitei wars and stuff like that, and attacks and terrorists and shit. And they're basically just they're just a government, really. They're just that's it. So he tells us that there is something called the Rakuzaichi coming in a month, which is what those 2 volumes up there, volumes 3 and 4, cover. And they have one of the most powerful enchanted blade called the Shinuichi, which is used in Volume 5. I don't have Volume 5 though. By the leader of the Rakuzaichi. And it's really sick. But yet again, I don't have Volume 5, so I'll have to cover it when I do get it in, like, November. So here's Sojo again. He's meeting up with some of the Ushaku members. And then that's it. And then this is the final chapter, Norisaku Madoka, I Will Change. This guy is the guy we saw earlier, the guy I covered earlier, who was using the Darumas to explode guys. After he gets defeated, yeah, this guy. He decides to change his ways, and do all that. But then Sojo comes in and ruins his day, which ends up ends up in self-destruction. But he ends up getting frozen by Sojo's enchanted blade called Cloud Gouger, which is more in depth in Volume 2. Of course, this is basically just a setup volume. It's my least favorite volume because it's more of a whole bunch of just setup and shit. While Volume 2 is just pure action, and I love it. But yet again, we'll get there. So he ends up unfreezing him, and he ends up exploding himself and his sister. He ends up taking out this guy. You know, we get to see a bit more of Gojo's past, but he doesn't really care. He still kills him. And then Sojo ends up walking into the main group's hideout. He ends up classing the Chihiro here, and it's super sick. That's his enchanted blade, Cloud Gouger. He ends up using an ability called Mei. And basically, the abilities for Cloud Gouger are Yui, Mei, and I forgot the third one. But Yui and Mei are lightning and ice. He has a water one as well. I forgot what that one was called. So we'll just have to find out, I guess. But this is their standoff, and it's so sick, bro. I remember only having this volume because I got it on my birthday, and this was the only one that was out. And I remember like just patiently waiting for February for Volume 2 to come out so I could read it. And when I finally got Volume 2, it was so peak, bro. And that's basically it for Volume 1. Quickly, I want to cover the cover art on this one. This one's sick. You see the N10's little water shit as he slices up this organization, and it's so sick. There's not really any cover art on the back like there is for Steel Ball Run or anything else, or the best example is One Punch Man, which has great cover art, both front and back. But I think just the front cover art here by Hokuzono is so good, bruh. I could glaze this manga for as long as I want. So anyways, that's pretty much it. Hopefully, this is getting really bad. But hopefully I can start getting to Steel Ball Run Volume 2 next video. Just have to read like the final main chapters and stuff. But yeah, that's gonna be it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.